most grown and genetically modified food after corn. About 90% of the soybeans in the United States are genetically modified, and they're genetically modified to be pesticide resistant to Monsanto's Roundup. And let's see, company mission and goals. We're going to give a brief background on the history of GMOs, finding the target market. We're going to show an advertising campaign that we made up, and then a SWOT analysis. And then Mary's going to talk about how the soybeans are genetically modified.
Roundup Ready soybeans are genetically engineered to become Roundup resistant, and the gene, the EPSPS gene found from the agrobacterium that's in the agrobacterium in the soil is modified and placed on a petri dish, and biolistics occurs where it like naturally modifies itself inside the petri dish.
And then this is just a soybean DNA tech sketch. It's actually used by a gene gun where gold particles are shot into the plant cell or the agrobacterium itself. And then soybeans, as you can see, they're pretty much in everything, even in small amounts such as cooking oils, maybe printer inks and tofu. And then Brandon's going to talk about the marketing environmental.
All right, GM soybeans in the market. Roundup Ready soybeans were made by the company Monsanto, and they're first commercially available in 1996. And since then, they have been accepted worldwide and make up about 98% of the soybean market. And they've become one of the most planted GM crops worldwide. Soy is in high demand because of its use in other food products. It is widely used to feed livestock because it has the protein they need to grow, and oil extracted from soy can be refined from soybeans for edible use. Other parts of the soybean are used as additives and other ingredients of food products, and most foods have a byproduct of soy used as an ingredient in some way. Competition. GM soybeans now dominate the market in terms of production annually because they can produce a higher yield and can be genetically modified to survive in their environment. GM soybeans are planted in farms without restriction, much like conventional soybeans, but have higher yield because they can keep up with the higher demand for soybeans worldwide. Legislation. In the United States, there are 3 agencies responsible for the release of GM crops. It's the FDA, the USDA, and EPA. Currently, GM food labeling is optional in the United States. The FDA makes sure that GM foods are safe, however they do not require any special treatment of genetically modified foods. Safety testing on GM foods is voluntary as long as the GMO is not significantly different from the traditional crop. Forces influencing the market. There is little restriction on the use of GM soybeans because they have already been accepted for use worldwide. And they are as cheap as conventionally grown soybeans with higher yield and have no harmful effects on humans. Customer attitude towards GMOs. This is our survey results. A large number of customers still doubt the safety of using genetically modified crops as a food source. Most people agree that the FDA should be more strict, requiring foods to label that they are genetically modified for the safety of the customer. And the majority of people we surveyed wanted the FDA to evaluate GM foods more thoroughly before releasing them for consumption. Now I believe Presley is going to tell us about the target market.
I had shared the graphs that I put, and they aren't shared on that computer. So Tell us about them. Okay, well, I made all the graphs for the survey, and our target market was males under the age of 35 with a bachelor's degree. I feel like the people that have been to college and all that understand genetically modified foods more because they've been to college and maybe learn more about it than people that have just been to high school and not known very much about it without taking genetics classes, something like that. And the graphs that I did, there were several pages of them. Let's see, the graphs, they talked about each of the questions we did and how the bachelor's degree and everything like that, how they were more against genetically modified foods. And also that females were more towards genetically modified food, thinking it's okay. Especially with older ladies, I guess they maybe feel that not eating genetically modified or eating genetically modified foods, thinking it's okay to eat and things like that. And let's see. Okay, now we're going to have Mary is going to talk about our strengths in the SWOT analysis.
Some of the strengths that were in our campaign were the fact that the ad really pulls at the emotions of our target audience. We're forming the ad kind of around malnutrition kids and from all over the world. And so the audience will feel an emotional connection to those kids and want to buy the product. This ad also proposes logical reasons for the consumer to support genetically modifying soybeans because of the fact that it increases the supply, it becomes resistant to herbicides, and it has high nutritional value for these quote-unquote malnutrition kids, and the overall result of feeding the starving children. Also, as a radio ad, people are less likely to change a radio station than they are a TV station because they're driving, and so that's also it's very good. The fact that it's a radio ad, it's good for our budget because TV ads are far more expensive, and so we had a good length ad for what it was. And we also included like jingles and stuff, so it becomes more appealing to listeners. And now I'm going to talk about some of the weaknesses from our campaign. One of the things is that it is only a radio ad. Less people listen to the radio than watch TV. Another is the fact that there's nothing to actually see, and people like to have visuals, and the ad doesn't necessarily appeal to every age or gender. So I think that Armand is going to talk about the opportunities and threats now.
Okay, there's numerous opportunities with soybeans. Actually, yeah, there's going to be significant opportunities in China since about 1/4 of the U.S. production goes there, and it's also a world power. And also, with the lactose intolerance, actually, according to the National Institutes of Health, about 90% of China's population is lactose intolerant. So that would be great to market to them. And then the vegan and broader vegetarian market will increase the popularity of soybeans as celebrities such as Ellen DeGeneres, Betty White approve of the use. And then domestic soybean oil is also another opportunity where large oil companies may use the soybeans into their new oil production. And then there's also opportunities in dietary supplements to treat chronic diseases such as diabetes. And large companies such as Ford have striven to become a green company. What this means is in their 2007 Ford Mustang, they've used soybeans in their seat cushioning, about 40% of it, and they actually had an innovation award. So maybe more car companies may want to use soybeans. And then there's threats to the campaign. Competition in the export markets, such as South America, in Brazil and Argentina, will be the major threat because we're competing with them for export markets and our own markets. And actually, the government shutdown a few days ago is the most interesting one because the soybean reports will not be able to be given to farmers in foreign markets. So they won't be able to assess their situations, such as the pricing and how much they want to import. And activists against the GMOs, when we send out our campaign, they may have another campaign to attack our campaign, saying it's all bad. Then as you can see, the graphs and charts that I made, United States is the second in world soybean production and soybean exports behind Brazil. So that's our main competition and threats to our campaign. And then Zach's going to talk about our marketing objective and our marketing campaign.
Well, I kind of had the fun part of it with the proposal. We all seemed to have a really good time with that. But as far as the objectives go, it seems like when we did our survey, a lot of people, when they heard genetically modified foods, they were automatically kind of taken back by it. And a lot of them associated modified foods as being fake or the usual rumors you hear about people getting cancer, tumors, and things like that, all because of the modifications in the foods. So our objective was to give the foods a more positive image and to show people that the modifications actually make the food better, not worse, and it's not something that you should be afraid of or really worried about. And so we also address any legal issues and things like that through our proposal. And so on the proposal, it was a big thing with getting the positive image out. When I did research on ads, it seemed that, like Mary said, it's a lot harder to turn off a radio ad than a television ad simply because you're driving. So you don't have that remote in your hand changing channels like you would with a television ad. Once I did research on it, pretty much all the radio stations call that your ad be either 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, or a minute long. And in terms of buying an ad, you buy them in slots. Like you can get 25 slots for 5 days, meaning your ad will play 5 times a day. And depending on how long your ad is, that determines how big of a slot you cover, which could be a little more price, a higher price. And also where your ad is being advertised. The more popular the radio station and also where that station airs also plays a big factor in how much it costs. So a pop station in Los Angeles is going to cost more than, say, some rap station or something here in the South where it's not going to appeal to as many people. So that played big effects. As far as our ad, ours was, like Mary says, exactly a minute long, and we actually didn't even have to do any type of modifications. We had the ad and we timed it and it was perfectly a minute. But like I said, we had a jingle. I did the jingle, and I think Mary and Presley did some of the dialogue during the jingle, and Armand, of course, he addressed the legal issues at the end. So I'm not going to screen share and play that for y'all. We had a pretty fun time doing that, I'd say. Full screen again. And that's our logo right there. Our everything logo also made that while doing our ad. But it's pretty funny. And like I said, the jingle would appeal to more people versus where if we're just talking, you can kind of lose a lot of listeners and they'll just not even focus on what you're talking to. But if you have a neat little jingle, something they can remember, something catchy, it kind of helps a little bit. So I'll play that.
Hi, I'm Mary Ashley, and I'm a computer. We're national representatives of the Feed the Children Foundation. Did you know that over 25 million children are being died every day of starvation, and over 15,000 children worldwide die of starvation daily? There is hope for these children. By genetically modifying soybeans, we can provide a safe way to feed these children. Soybeans are already a great source of nutrients, and by genetically modifying them, they become herbicide resistant and are produced quicker in order to increase supply and feed more hungry children. So in order to support our cause, buy genetically modified soybeans today. Thank you for feeding the children.
So as you can tell, all the big time drama we had in that, and then of course Armand doing the usual sound effects real fast like you see all the time in the ads. It was pretty fun. We had a good time with it, but also it's something catchy and will appeal to the public, we believe. So we had a good time with that, and everything was great. Is there anything we haven't covered?
Do y'all have any questions for us?
I don't have any questions. I think this is the first group. What Ms. Jennings and I have noticed is that each group is kind of being really successful with one thing that we really wanted to be in the project. And I don't think that everybody's had everything so far, but I think this group really did well with the SWOT analysis. I really do think you understood that the SWOT analysis was supposed to be about the marketing proposal, not just the GMO. Like,
Yeah, we did it. Oh.
like this nailed that, and I also feel like you guys on your side did a really good job on the marketing campaign. Like that was the first one I kind of saw where there was some creativity, you know. And, well, don't get me wrong, some of the other ones were, but I could see like the jingle and stuff like that. So I really liked that. So that was good. So I'm giving some praise there.
I agree with that. I agree on the SWOT analysis. And I also feel like part of this, they were communicating with the group of four rather than it seeming like they were just talking into the air.
Yes. And I think that everybody has a different comfort zone, but the idea, Ms. Jennings, you and I talked about not talking to the slide and being comfortable and being able to walk in like it's a boardroom is starting to get achieved. But I think some of that's a Google Hangout issue. They need to get familiar with it. But yeah, I see improvement.